Hello and welcome to another edition of For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. My guest today is Commissioner Betsy Ritter. She is here representing the State Department on Aging. It is her first time on the show, so welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sean.
Here's my first question, and I want a really good answer to this. Why must we age? No, I'm kidding, of course.
Wait a minute.
Okay, we might actually have an answer to this question.
At the State Department on Aging, we get asked that question all the time.
Is that right?
Even more particularly, we get asked if we have figured out how to stop it.
Oh, well, I think you would. The department would be much wealthier if they actually knew the answer to that question.
Absolutely, but sadly, no. We have not figured out how to stop it.
When they say, why must we continue aging, what do you say to that? Just natural part of life, right?
It's a natural part of life because we're all living organisms and organisms age.
Well, let's start with sort of talking about basic understanding of what the State Department on Aging is and why a department like that is necessary.
Sure, I'd be happy to. You might know, although you're younger than I am, that Connecticut for decades had an independent agency, a State Department on Aging. Way back in 1965, when the federal government passed the Older Americans Act, the provisions of the act brings money to the states to administer specific programs for the elderly. Lots of people are most familiar with the meals programs, Meals on Wheels, or congregate settings.
Very good programs, by the way.
Absolutely.
They get a lot of good publicity because they do great work.
Yes, they do. And along with that comes nutrition and health counseling and a host of other opportunities for states to help their aging populations. Those programs are administered through designated area agencies on aging. And states then have a specified state unit on aging that receives the federal money, acts as the federal financial intermediary, it does the contracting and the reporting and the fiduciary responsibility. That's us. Our state had its own independent agency on aging for many, many years until 1991. And in 1991, then Governor Weicker took that agency and several others and rolled them into the Department of Social Services, an existing large agency, kind of made it bigger.
Does that make sense at the time? Did it make sense to do that?
At the time, the governor was sure that it fit in well with his priorities and would work for the state. At that time, the commissioner was Edith Prague, and she took some issue with the governor's action and ultimately went on for a career in the state Senate and worked hard to reestablish the agency as an independent agency.
Even after Governor Weicker had left office, right?
Oh, yes. This went on for quite a while. And in 2013, Governor Malloy reestablished the State Department on Aging, along with 3 or 4 other agencies as independent agencies, and he appointed Edith Prague to be commissioner again.
Talk about, what goes around comes around. It's like karma coming back around, right?
I think that's certainly for then Senator and again Commissioner Prague, that's how she felt. She served for about 1.5 years and then retired.
It was like a perfect way to wrap up her career doing that job, fighting for so many years about what she wanted, right?
And as an advocate, of course, she's everywhere I go, all over the state, people want to know how she's doing, which is, by the way, great. And I have the opportunity of talking to her on a regular basis, and sometimes we can get together and do things.
She have a lot of good ideas still about,
oh, yes.
Is that right?
And I will say an unwavering advocacy for our state seniors.
Let's fast forward a little bit more to closer to today as far as the agency. How many changes has it gone through? Obviously, things evolve.
Yes.
And you have to evolve for the changing times, so it must be a little different these days, right?
Yes, it is. When the governor appointed me this past January, that was in 2015, he did it with a recognition that in Connecticut, this sector of our population is the fastest growing. Connecticut currently is the 6th oldest state in the country, 7th oldest now, soon to be 6.
Wow, moving up, huh?
We are moving up.
The population in general is getting older, right?
Yes, it is.
Right, in the world.
In the world,
Yep.
But specific to our state, when you look at the demographics, it's also changing in some other significant ways, and that's because of people like me, baby boomers. And when you asked about changes the agency has had, we have also been looking and are working even harder to change with that demographic. As it becomes larger, yes, and we always will have a component of our population that we need to spend a lot of time being concerned about, the frail or elderly. But now, with a lot of baby boomers coming in, we're looking at different ways to address our needs as we age. So I'll give you an example.
All right.
I'm a baby boomer myself. And things like the way I might address my susceptibility to chronic disease, I would like to manage or think I'm managing my health and my things myself, being a baby boomer, you know. We're, of course, sure that we know more answers to things or that we can control things in different ways. So I'm looking for services that help me do that, help me manage things, perhaps work a little further, work a little in advance to try to stay healthy longer. I'm sure I'll never age, of course, because I'm a baby boomer.
So the agency's trying to...
There's some different focuses
Yeah.
there that we have been working on a bit.
Instead of trying to force baby boomers into a methodology that they might not be comfortable with or familiar with, the smart thing to do is to kind of go with what baby boomers like to do. And if they feel that they're kind of controlling it on their own, maybe create a sort of a way for them to be able to do that, even though you are kind of helping them out a little bit there,
Well,
preventing
yeah.
them with the options.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And a lot of it also down the road, I think things will look a little bit differently as we all continue to age and have to make different choices about where we live, where we want to live, and how we want to live. So it's important that we be paying a lot of attention to that when we start looking at services and things that we can help with.
How is it that this agency is able to survive with, and of course you hear it a lot, budget cuts, and there's always the thing about trying to snip this, agency, cutbacks in this area. How are you able to survive that?
Never easily, I can tell you that. And as you well know, right now there is a lot of discussion about just how our services may have to change and things we may have to address in different ways. So it puts a greater burden on us to be creative about how we do that and stricter in the ways that we evaluate the services we provide now. I talked a little bit about the Federal Older Americans Act. Currently, the bulk of funding that comes through us, through the State Department on Aging, is related to the Federal Act, the Federal Older Americans Act. When we look at the provisions in there, it's sometimes difficult for us to work inside those parameters because that was created in 1965.
Kind of outdated a little bit?
Well, you talk about things like the meals program
Right.
is a perfect example.
I'm a big advocate of that because I think I've seen
wonderful.
it. I've seen it in action do such good things for people. you know?
Absolutely. And the need, sadly, is a growing need among our senior population in Connecticut and across the country. Food insecurity is becoming a more common topic, and we need to work harder to find ways to address it. But people also are interested in eating different things and in managing in different ways where they go to get those meals and how they change along with it.
Are they interested in eating healthier?
In general, yes, which is very gratifying
Right.
because years of work really prodded by the federal government.
Right. I
through
think
that
people are
program
more informed now.
has made
right?
a big difference. And the questions that come back to us too, also different. The folks that work to provide the meals increasingly are responding to this with more creative solutions. And you're seeing meals programs being offered in different ways in different parts of the state. And that's important that we do that because it has to be appealing to people too. They have to want to come.
Right. As commissioner, do you find, we were talking about the budget aspect of it, do you find yourself sort of advocating or lobbying on behalf of the agency to make sure that,
Oh, yes.
that you're right there on the cusp of getting the funds necessary?
Yes.
Yeah.
And we have also the ability in many cases to bring research and information to some of that process, which I think is very helpful. That does not mean we have been immune
Oh, no.
from
Yeah.
any of this, and it's because it's a group process. The whole state needs to be paying attention to this. The questions that need to be addressed are how best to use our resources.
Tell me about the role or your job duties as commissioner day to day. Very different on any given day, or is it pretty? Obviously, one of them is sort of
Yes.
the de facto PR person, right?
That is correct. And in our mission, specifically, we are charged with an advocacy role for the senior population in the state.
Do you think the word is getting out enough about what's available to those
I hope
agents?
so. I can tell you that we work hard to do that. As a state, we are technically or geographically a small state.
Right.
But
Does that make it
I
easier?
work hard to get around to as many places as I can.
Does that make it easier for you to have it be somewhat of a small state?
Oh, that's a good question,
Yeah.
actually. I'll tell you something that makes it different in this state, and that is we're really caught between different media markets in Connecticut.
Right, good
and
point.
that perhaps makes it a little harder. We talked earlier about specifically how you cover the entire state geographically, and different parts of it are captured by different markets. That does make it a little harder. I will tell you that our main partner in building our network of services for the aging are our 5 area agencies on aging. So when I told you earlier that the Federal Older Americans Act requires that these services be offered through area agencies on aging, it's a mouthful, isn't it?
Oh, it really is. That could fit on a business card, by the way? Yeah.
Sometimes we call them AAAs.
Right, make it easier.
But they cover the entire state and have geographic, their geographic designations help us in disseminating information. That's a big part of it, and in reaching every town across the state. So that's very helpful for us.
We've got a lot to cover today, so what I want to do now is take a break and have you give out the website for people to go and learn more, and then we'll come back and we'll really get into the minutia of it, okay?
Sure. And anybody who wants to learn more can find us at www.ct.gov/aging.
All right, we'll take a break and come right back. Betsy Ritter, the Commissioner of the State Department on Aging. We've got a lot to get to, so we will take a short break. I'm Sean Murphy. This is For the Record. We'll be back. Welcome back to For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. My guest today is Commissioner Betsy Ritter. She is the Commissioner on the State Department of Aging. When we went to the break, I had you give out the website. What's on the website for people to see, by the way?
So that website represents all of the activities and connections that we can provide through the State Department on Aging. And it's pretty broad. You got a lot of categories there because we cover a lot of ground. Some of the stuff that we haven't talked about yet, we've talked a little bit about specific services that we offer. We also house the long-term care ombudsman for the state of Connecticut. You may or may not know that their charge is to protect the rights, the health, and the welfare of residents of long-term care facilities all over the state. So that would be nursing homes, retirement homes, and assisted livings.
That's a tough topic to talk about. You could do a whole show just on that because there's always, you'll hear stories about difficulty paying for that, and
Yes.
and it's a tough. It's hard for people to kind of accept the fact that a facility like that is necessary sometimes, right?
That is correct. Yeah. Although I would like to just give you a little bit of maybe my perspective.
Sure.
There were times, even as recently as 20 years ago, when there were far more difficult stories out there about our institutions and exactly many of the circumstances and the experiences that people had.
Times are getting better then.
It's really changed a lot. Offices, the activities of our long-term care ombudsman, as well as changes in the healthcare system and the state's commitment, which is the mission of our agency, to help people, whenever possible, stay in their homes. Meaning that the facility, the institution, is there when it's needed, but not at any other time, has really changed the environment and had the experiences that a lot of people, most people have in long-term care facilities. It's a bit of a different world there, for the good.
Yeah. So let's get into some of the programs that we've been talking about. One of the things which has already been mentioned, Meals on Wheels. Let's talk about like who really gets served with this fantastic service. But maybe we can get into it a little bit deeper.
Sure. There's a couple of different ways that meals are delivered. Many people are aware of meals that are delivered to the home, and through what is called the Meals on Wheels program.
Right.
And those are for homebound. People who can't get out need the meals. And in many cases, those meals are delivered perhaps by a volunteer or through a volunteer network, through the Meals on Wheels volunteers, In some, they are delivered through the meal provider, the people that prepare the meal, and then deliver them specifically to people in homes. We also oversee congregate meals, and they are served it's over 220 facilities around the state serve congregate meals. In many cases, those are at senior centers or community centers, churches, other congregate meal settings associated with municipalities or not. And in some cases, the meals are prepared on site. In other cases, they are prepared by a large meal provider who prepares packages and delivers them. So you see a big variety of meal preparation. Interestingly enough, in 2014, we served over 2 million meals around the state of Connecticut.
Wow, that's impressive. That is impressive.
And that's a lot of meals.
And you know, we had a brutal winter, so it was obviously tough at certain points to actually be able to get out and deliver the meals in the first place.
Absolutely.
You know?
And there's a lot of course, concern and preparation that goes in about this time of year. We also have the storm season upon us, and we work hard to prepare people, particularly the homebound, with what we call shelf-stable meals, so that should we not be able to get there, there's an assurance that there will be a meal. Might not be quite as good as that meal that is prepared every day.
They'll get the job done, though,
But
right?
you know what? It gets the job done.
In your explanation, when we were talking about Meals on Wheels, then you used a term. It's another subject that I want to talk about because I think it gets overlooked. There are a lot in Connecticut, but not a lot of people to utilize them, and that is senior centers. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Okay. Let me start by putting it sort in its perspective. Not everybody understands that in Connecticut, towns are not required to have or maintain a senior center or a community center. They make that choice themselves. State law requires that every municipality assign a municipal agent for the elderly to be the information point, advise people on services and where they can get services, education, and help with their needs. Most towns, many towns, have either chosen to build a senior center, provide a senior center, or a community center where many services are directly delivered to seniors and other members of the community who want to come there.
Obviously, then, these centers, whether it's a community center or senior center, are clearly needed if even the state only mandates that you have an agent, but the municipalities decide to go ahead with their own tax-based money to build them anyway. So obviously they're needed.
That is correct. There's support available for many of them through grants through their area agencies on aging, money that comes from the Older Americans Act, but in general, it's the municipality. So that means you see all kinds of different arrangements that towns have worked out to provide their senior and or community centers. There are some that are independent 501c3 organizations that maybe they get a grant from the town. There are others where the town has provided a building, sometimes paid for the staff, sometimes provided different levels of support for programming, either for the community or for just the senior population, or both, or different combinations thereof. So it's pretty interesting. In many, many cases, then, congregate meals are offered at those centers, and they're a primary source for convenient locations for meal provision.
Aside from the congregate meals, what are some of the other services that a senior center might offer?
You see lots of counseling through programs that the Area Agency on Agencies offer that are delivered at senior centers all over the state. The best example and most timely right now has to do with the Medicare program through what in Connecticut is called the Choices program. Our Area Agencies on Aging provide choices counseling for Medicare recipient. And you may not yet know that when you reach the Medicare eligibility age, there are a lot of decisions that everybody makes as to exactly what kinds of Medicare coverage they want to take on that best serves them. and it's fairly complicated.
Yeah.
I went through the counseling myself just a little while ago, and I can tell you, for one thing, it's something I will be repeating because it's complicated and there are different decision points.
It definitely warrants its own show for sure. You could do a whole
Absolutely.
show just on those choices.
And every year, now in the fall, starting in the middle of October, is the re-enrollment period for some of those choices.
So it's kind of an open enrollment period,
Yes,
basically?
it is.
Okay.
So a lot of that occurs in community centers, in senior centers, and folks from the AAA's, Agencies on Aging, will come down. They are trained in the counseling and can help take people through the decision process, answer their questions, give them more information, and help them make the appropriate decisions about how they want their Medicare coverage, and that includes prescription drug plans and all of the other things that come along with it, how they want it to look for the upcoming year.
Before we run out of time, I know you put a lot of work into gathering a lot of statistics, so I wanted to make sure you had the opportunity to talk about them a little bit before we run out of time.
Sure, I'd be
Yeah.
happy to.
All right.
So I told you that Connecticut is the 7th oldest state in the country, soon to be number 6. 15.3% of our population right now is over the age of 65. If you look at the brackets of people that are 5 years younger, 10 years younger, and 15 years younger, it's easy to see how that section of the population is growing so rapidly, and how it will impact our demographics rolling out into the future. But not everybody understands that in Connecticut, of all of the households in Connecticut, a little over 25% of them contain at least one person age 65 or over. And that also kind of gives you an idea of where people are and how they live.
Can I just ask you a question? This is a general question.
Yeah.
Should we be concerned about Social Security? Because that's always like the big red flag about that. Should we be worried about it down the road?
Actually, today is a very interesting day that you bring this up.
I did it on purpose.
Oh, very good. As most people now know, this is one of the years where there is no cost of living increase in Social Security. And actually, literally, as I was driving here, I understand that at the federal government, they have found a provision at least to protect people who receive Social Security and are on Medicare from having that huge resulting increase in their Medicare premiums. And I'm really pleased about that. It's my understanding that there are provisions in there also that will impact the viability of the Social Security Fund into the future. I'm not so sure that's as big a problem
Or a concern.
Although as the proportion of the population ages and receives Social Security, it needs to be discussed seriously.
Are they still kind of kicking the can down the road, so to
A
speak,
bit.
on this? Are they?
Well, this is government.
Yeah.
And,
So the answer is yes.
The answer will be yes. But I think that in terms of the general education level about the implications of doing that has really risen in the last couple of years.
I'm
So
at
it's
an
my
age-
hope that we stay there. Yeah, we are at an age.
I'm at an age where I'm like wondering, because everybody keeps telling me, oh, when it's time for you, it's not going to be there. So now I'm wondering if that in fact will be the case. I either want to hurry up and get to that age, which I really don't, or I want the situation to be rectified so that I don't have to worry about it.
So one of the things that can sometimes be frustrating is, of course, I'm with the state at the State Department on Aging and can't control those decisions.
I know.
Can
Just
advocate for
only
them,
your state, yeah.
and yeah, that can sometimes be tough.
So before we run out of time, people watching the show, what should they know? What questions should they be asking, and what can you do to help in sort of a layperson's way?
Sure. I would most commonly advise people that as they or their family or their friends become older and want to start looking at the decisions and choices that will be ahead of them, always remember that your area agencies on aging are there to advise, to help with planning, to encourage people to make appropriate plans as they look ahead. Putting your head in the sand like the proverbial ostrich is not a great approach and ultimately can't benefit anybody. And so planning is really the big deal. I will be sure to tell them, anyone that is interested in contacting their area agencies on aging to discuss any of this stuff, we have a toll-free number set up for in-state. It is 800-994-9422. You can reach any of your area agencies on aging, and I would encourage anybody with questions to start there.
Perfect way to wrap up the show. Any questions, the website and the phone number is there for you. We learned a lot today. We could probably do another whole show on, I had so many more questions.
Easily.
Commissioner Betsy Ritter on the State Department of Aging. Pleasure having you on the show. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
You can see this show and many others on our YouTube sites. Until next time, I'm Sean Murphy. This is For the Record. Take care.